I bid you welcome.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on a brand new live stream of Paratalk. So I'd just like to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be around this very strange and wacky and sometimes disturbing world of ours. I'm Gareth Davis, and I want to thank you so much for coming on to the Mindset Central channel. If this is your first time coming on to the channel, please consider subscribing. So hit that button, hit that like, do all the good stuff, all the things the kids talk about these days. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss anything. So once again, I am joined today by Mr. Paranormal Expert himself, or paranormal enthusiast, as we like to say on the show, Mr. Reeves Cook. So let's bring in Reeves. Hey, Reeves, how you doing?
Hello, Gareth. Back again.
Back again, man.
Another episode live.
Very much so. Let's get it is very live today, Reeves, and today we're going to be talking about, of course, something very close and dear to our hearts. That is the subject of UFOs and ufology. So, where do we begin? We have an awful lot of photographs to look through today, Reeves, and I've looked through them all, and they're all fascinating. So, how do we roll this out to our viewing audience?
Well, I think we should start with the history of UFO photographs and what makes a UFO photograph. So I think that we live in an age now where everything is instant. We live in a digital age. We've left behind the analog age, even though analog is still around. It's kind of more of a a vintage interest, just to coin a phrase. But I think that we have to go back to the days of film, and where you kind of had a little bit more authenticity and a little bit more realism when it came to photography of the unknown and for strange pictures. Because I think that even though you could fake stuff back then, it was much more expensive to do so, and you needed a lot of skill and know-how to do it. So I think that what we should really do is, I think, maybe pick a case to start with that is one that's got a lot of sort of divide when it comes to pictures and photography, and and could someone fake it? And I think that a good one to start would be the Billy Meier photographs and his experience and what he captured all those years ago.
What I found interesting also, Reeves, is the selection of photographs that we have set up today.
Yeah.
They're all from like 1990 and before. We have nothing modern, and I think that stands to testament because from 1990 onwards, with the advent of more and more powerful computers, it became more and more easier, almost trivial to fake UFO photographs. And if you search on YouTube or on Google for UFO photographs and you find recent photographs, it's very, very difficult to distinguish what's a real photograph and which is Photoshop or some kind of trickery. Whereas if you go back and you look through like the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, even though obviously there are fake UFO photographs from those time periods, it becomes that much more difficult, especially if you go back to like the 50s. Was it possible to fake a UFO photograph in the 50s? Absolutely. But it would have been very difficult. You would have had to jump through multiple hoops to get something looking very, very realistic. Possible, harder. Now, anyone, you fire up your PC and in 10 minutes you have a completely authentic looking UFO photograph. So it's difficult.
That's the problem. Yeah, that is the problem. The problem is that we live in an age where we can create things that look so real, whether it be film or or pictures, or it looks so authentic that it's very difficult. So I kind of purposely left out some of the more modern pictures that get talked about, because there is the chance that the things are going to be possibly fake or not real, or it's very difficult in this age to pick stuff out that you can really point at and go, well, that could be possibly, obviously you can still put it through the works and check it and make sure that it's not been tampered with. But even now that the software is getting so sophisticated that it's getting harder and harder to know if something isn't actually what it purports to be.
Right. So
that's one of the reasons that I kind of picked the pictures that are very analog based, very have a negative and a print, and kind of go back, because obviously, yes, like I said earlier, you can fake stuff in those days if you had the equipment, but the equipment was incredibly expensive and you had to have the know-how, and you just couldn't do it in your bedroom. It wasn't really possible. Even you had to have a computer which was the equivalent of what you would call a supercomputer back then. So even just doing the most rudimentary Photoshop work, it's very difficult.
Yeah, there's no question. It's now it's child's play, but back then it was a whole different deal. Okay, so I'm going to take your advice, Reeves, and we're gonna delve into the Billy Meier case first. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Billy Meier case, these photographs are incredibly controversial.
Yeah,
and they're controversial because these photographs were produced in the mid to late 1970s, and they caused a stir because most UFO photographs up to that time were either like a little light in the sky or something blurry, and you couldn't really get any detail, whereas Billy Meier came out and published high quality, close-up, extremely detailed images of purported extraterrestrial craft. So let's take a look at the first one. I'm going to pull up Billy Meier number 1.
Okay.
It'll take me a second to line this up, so give me a second here. There we go. I'll stretch this out a little bit, and we'll get this. We'll get it sorted out. Hang on. There we go. All right. So.
Yeah. So this was taken.
The first one.
Yeah. So this was taken from where his area where he lived and where he was having the contacts. This was taken, and it was taken of one of the craft that they were visiting him apparently, and it was one of the great things is that there is video of this. Well, when you say video, it's more cine film
it's
of this craft,
8mm cine film. Yeah,
cine, and it's actually touching the trees. You can see it wobbling and touching the trees. Now
it goes around the tree, right?
It moves around the tree, but it's actually touching the tree as well.
Yeah.
Now, people say one of the things they say about the Billy Meier case is that it was done. It's all forced perspective. It's these models are tiny.
Right.
He's using trickery. He's using, basically tricking people by using particular lens, focal lengths, and he's also using forced perspective where he's putting objects at a certain distance to trick the eye. When you look at the image, it's much smaller than what it is, but our brains make it much bigger. And also when you try to do measure the objects that are in the background to the object that's being photographed, that it comes out as being much bigger than what it actually is. That the problem is that there are so many of these pictures that he's taken. Now you got to remember, this man is someone who's got one arm.
Right.
He's taken these with a very standard 35mm camera, and it's all kind of very sort of in the moment. So he's basically, he goes back. If I give you a little bit of history to Billy Meier and his experiences, we can kind of build a background story as to how he got to where he is by taking these pictures. Now, obviously, Billy Meier, he claimed that he'd had encounters since like 1942
with the Palladians, right? From the Pleiades star system.
At the age of 5, yeah. He was a little boy, and he met an elderly man who was apparently an extraterrestrial, and his name was Sethath. And
I love it when you pronounce stuff, Reeves. It's great.
Oh, I know, I'm rubbish at it. I really am not very good. But after this individual passed away in 1953, Meier recounts that he started to have contact with another individual, and it was a woman called Asket, and his contacts went on then, and that his contacts ceased in around 1960-64. And he said that they resumed around January of 1975. Now, this is when he met another individual, Sam Jays. He was meant to be the this person was meant to be the granddaughter of the first individual that he had met. So what he's basically saying is that the individuals that he's having contact with are all part of a family or something along those lines. Now, shortly after that, he met another person, and who was related in some way, and he had other extraterrestrial, sort of meetings with these people. Now, he had these kind of meetings with people, and he was able to, being told to be at a certain place at a certain time, that they would show him their abilities or their crafts and stuff. And then he was able to, because obviously this is like, very quiet area. There's not very many people around. This is kind of literally
this is in Switzerland, right?
Switzerland, yeah.
Yeah, in Switzerland, yeah.
In the hills where it's surrounded by forests and stuff. It's a very quiet place.
Those hills are alive with the sound of music.
They certainly are. UFO music, apparently.
Yeah.
According to Billy. But no, so the thing is that he had all these encounters, and he was taking all these pictures of these craft in flight, and then it kind of grew from taking pictures of these craft in flight to actually physically meeting, obviously, these people.
Right.
He was having meetings with them, And this is where things get a bit. You kind of start to think. You start to scratch your head a little bit, because I have a theory.
Okay.
It's only a theory. I think that Billy did have something. He did experience something, and he did see something.
Yeah.
Of course, there are the individuals that say, okay, well, why was he found to be making models of these craft, and why were the models that he was trying to make very similar to the craft that he was photographing? I believe that he didn't want these experiences to end, and these experiences had ended, and he wasn't getting any more contact. He wasn't having any more photo opportunities. So he was trying to keep the illusion going that there was, if he kept doing it and kept trying to tell people about his contact and what he was having, that they would someday come back and reintroduce themselves to him, and things would continue as they did before. Now, the thing is that he did have his enemies, and he did have his, side of people that didn't believe a word that he was saying. They thought he was completely making it up. He started to bring together quite a large following of people that did believe what he was talking about.
Wasn't there like for a while there was, or maybe still today, there was like a kind of a religious aspect to Meier stuff.
He put together a group of people, followers, and you can join his group of people. I think it's still going today, but he actually had people that literally hated him. Somebody tried to shoot him. Somebody took a pot shot. They were having a group gathering at his house, his home, and a bullet came through the window and embedded in the wall near him. So somebody tried to shoot him. Now, obviously you can spin that either way. You can say, well, somebody really didn't like him, and they wanted him to stop spreading this nonsense, so they were going to silence him, or possibly that it was some dark cloaked figure that was from the government that wanted to shut him up because he was getting too close. It's possible.
Now the photographs and the video that he produced in the 70s was spectacular, and stuff that usually back then, where UFO photographs that looked really good were automatically put under suspicion. You automatically thought, well, this, there's no way, this has got to be some kind of hoax or something like that. Let's take a look at another photograph. Now this one here, like you say, it could be forced perspective, right? So the craft there is either just like a little model that's closer to the lens than it, but it looks like it's far away. Or it's a large craft in the distance. Now, to get it to kind of hover there like that, he's probably, if it's fake, he's probably has some strings or something hooked up onto something. But what? You know what I mean?
Well, yes, I have. Somebody did actually spend the time to think about how he might have done it. And they came up with the conclusion that he would have to have a very large crane.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
Suspending a model in the sky, so that it also. I find it difficult to the amount of work that it would take to do this. It would be massive, and I think that he should be working for, unless he's got some sort of special effects background where he knows and he understands photography and he understands perspective and he understands how the human brain and the eye works. He's really good at what he's doing, and I think that when we look at these pictures, they look too. You could say they look too real. Okay, but when I say they look too real, I'm not saying they don't look real, but what I'm saying is that whatever you're looking at is actually there.
Well, yeah.
Now, what that is, who knows?
Well, they do look real, and you do bring up a good point, Reeves, because, so let me just pull it back up. So this image right here, I think I'm pointing in the right direction. Beep, 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 beep. This image right here, anybody could fake that today in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Easy.
And it would look just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Right? And you could knock it out in 10 minutes. But if you go back to, say, 1973, 1974, and you wanted to create this image, that's a whole different deal, right?
Yes.
You gotta build a model, right? And it looks like it's metallic, so you'd have to put some metallic paint or maybe make it out of metal. I don't know. It would have to be of a fairly large size, maybe a foot or two in width. Then you'd have to figure out, well, how the hell am I going to get this up into the air so I can pull up my camera and snap a picture? So, like you said, you'd need like some kind of crane or some kind of device to hold up the wires or whatever he's using and get that all in place, and then take the picture. Ka-cheek, right? And then you get this, or with this right there, right? So, is it possible that he could have done all that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. He could have done it, right? That is in the realms of possibility. Would it have been a huge ordeal and a big nightmare to do? Yes, it would have been a big deal. Now, considering this was a man in the 70s who was in his 50s, right? Who only had one arm, could only use the camera, take the picture with just one hand, because obviously he only had one arm, take the picture with one thing. And he would go out on his own, like he would say to people, they're calling me, I'm going to go. And he'd go off to someplace on his own and then come back, half an hour later, and he'd have these photographs on his camera. Right? So it doesn't completely add up, Reeves. Do you know what I mean?
No, it doesn't. This is the problem. This is the thing. With this case, it's kind of. Well, you can look at it from two different perspectives. You can look at it where he did have an experience and he met real people from another place, and they were in spacecraft, and he'd had all these experiences from when he was a young child, and he'd grown up, and he was an individual that needed to meet these people and give a message to the world, or that for himself, it was something that. I'm not going to say he dreamt it up, but I'm going to say that in some way he wanted something like this to happen, and he created it to make it real. So you've got two sides of you've got two sides of this. But you can also mix those two together, where you have an individual that has had something very meaningful happen in their life, and they really want it to continue, and they'll do anything they can, whether it makes making models or taking photographs to continue the the dream of what was happening going. Or to keep it going, to keep the interest there,
right?
Because obviously you want to keep people interested, and you want to and you keep the story alive, to keep it, I'm not crazy, this happened to me, sort of thing, and here's the proof. The problem is you have, it's very difficult to go back and think what's the way that the way that you think back then with the no technology. You've got the computers, we didn't have computers like we have today. We don't have all the technology we have today. It's very rudimentary, right. And you have to kind of think how they might think back then in the 70s, where things were a lot simpler when it came to technology, unless you had all the contacts and stuff. But we can. This is why we're here having this conversation and looking at these pictures, because these pictures have literally, researchers have fallen out with each other over these pictures. Right. Literally fallen out with each other
because the pictures don't make sense. Let's look at the final one we have here right now. This is a very famous Billy Meier photograph, and in fact, this photograph was cropped for the Fox Mulder X-Files. Let's see if I can see. Can you see my Can you see my mouse moving? They're like,
yes.
like they cropped it right here. Right, I'm drawing like a kind of shape there, and then at the bottom they wrote "I want to believe." So this was the original poster that Fox Mulder had in his office in the X-Files. But let's take a look at this photograph right now. It does look like a structured craft hovering in the air over a meadow, and it looks very real, right? And the minute a UFO photograph looks very real, it becomes immediately suspect.
Yes.
So what's the easy way to take this photograph is that he's standing in the meadow, this craft shows up, he points the camera at it and clicks the button, and he's done. What's the other way he could do it? How else could he take this photograph? Assuming,
well, this is an interesting. If now I'm going from memory here, and I may be completely wrong. Maybe I should have done. I should have looked it up beforehand. But I have an interesting thing that's come to mind. This picture appears in a clip from one of his films that he filmed with his camera. And if you look at the film, it's a very short clip. But you can see the object in the sky, and he's filming it above. It's hovering above those logs. But also in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a car traveling down the road.
Wait. In this film, I don't see it in this.
There's no.
Oh, I see.
There's a cine film.
Yeah. Because we should remind viewers that Billy Meier not only took dozens and dozens of high quality color close-up photographs of these craft, he also filmed them with a cine 8mm cine camera, where you can see these things flying around and hovering and all this stuff. So that there's this film and photographs of these craft.
No, as I say, I mean, it's possible for anything to be faked, and it's possible for anything to be, for anyone to say anything where they had an experience or they saw this or saw that. I mean, anyone can say that, and anyone can take a picture and say whatever it is. If you don't know what is in the picture,
right?
Anyone could say, oh, well, that's a spaceship or whatever. Anyone can say anything. But the thing is that when you look at these pictures as a whole, you either have to. It's not. I don't think it's a question of being one side or the other. I think it's more a question for me personally. When I look at this case, I think it's more a case. I just scratch my head because I'm thinking these pictures look so real, but they also look so real that they look so good that you just think, well, they must not be real.
Fake, yeah.
And maybe that's it. Maybe that's us. Maybe that's human nature that to us to be suspect of anything.
We have to kind of. I mean, I have no idea whether this is a real photograph. I'd like to think that it is, but do I know? No, I don't know. I'd like to think it's real, but it could be faked. There's multiple ways he could have faked it, but you got to look at the guy himself. An illiterate farmer, right? He couldn't read or write. Well, he could, but barely. No education to speak of. Only has one arm. And he would go out on his own and take these photographs. Now, when you put all that together, it's, you know what I mean, Reeves? It's. Is it possible? Did he have help? Did he have people? That I am going to take the photograph, and off he goes into the woods somewhere, and he meets a bunch of other guys who's already got the crane and everything set up, and he takes that. Is that possible? I don't know. Or maybe he was skilled with what's it called with the film where you can do like I'm brain farting. What's the word where you do like a duplicate image over the film? What's the word?
Exposure.
Double exposure. You could be doing double exposures, things of that nature. We simply don't know, and the only reason we would think these photographs are fake is because it's taking a photograph of something that we don't see in regular life, right? So you think,
it literally is alien to us.
Yeah, like if this photo, like if this photograph right here. Just imagine the exact same photograph, but instead of a flying saucer, there was a helicopter or an airplane. We wouldn't give it a second thought, right? But it could still be fake. You know what I mean? Like he could have like an airplane flying right there. And it would look totally real, and we'd all look and say, "Oh, look, it's a photograph of an airplane." but the airplane might not have been there. He might have completely faked it, had it on a string, or had the model of the plane on a string, or done a double exposure, or blah, blah, blah. And it's a completely fake photograph. But I guarantee you, most people would look at it and think, oh, it's real, even though it's fake. You know what I mean?
I just think, the man himself, if he faked all this, he had a plan and he executed it very well, and he did a terrific job. If they're real, then when we look comparing to, although I don't like to compare pictures, if you think of there are other, we will come to a few a little bit into this live stream, but there are other pictures out there that people have taken with just simply run-of-the-mill cameras that also look too real. They look so real that you would immediately say, well, obviously that's not real. That's fake. And you have to have this kind of happy medium where you're a little bit skeptical and you're a little bit open-minded, and you've got to mix the two together. You can't just go, well, I don't think it's real, so it's not real. Or you can't just believe and go, yeah, well, obviously that clearly that's an alien spaceship. You have to have that little kind of middle ground where you look at it and think, well, yeah, it could be one or the other, and let's look at all the reasoning behind it and draw a conclusion from that.
And I think I think people looking at the Billy Meier photographs, if you're a very skeptical person in regard to ufology, you might think it's all nonsense, or you might give it 3 seconds of thought every year, and you see these photographs, you're immediately going to lean towards, well, this is obviously nonsense.
Well, yeah, it's kind of natural. Yeah,
it's a natural, and also saying these are fake, or it's also the easy way out, right? Because it's easier to say they're fake than to invest time and say, well, these are real. So if you're skeptical by nature and a little bit lazy, then you're automatically going to dismiss these photographs, right? If you're not, if you do spend a lot of time thinking about UFOs and ufology and doing the research, you're open to the fact that these photographs are fake, and they might very well be. Don't get me wrong, but you're more likely to spend the time and dig into it and look at the story and invest time in the story and come to a more rounded conclusion as to what may or may not be happening, as opposed to spending 3 seconds, look, oh, it's fake, next, right? So,
as I say, I mean, when it comes to Billy Meier, I mean, I think our next round of pictures is quite good, because it follows on quite nicely to what we've just been talking about. And so I think what we're going to do is we're going to look at some basically everyone. I mean, no, if you're into UFOs and you used to watch Sightings, a TV show, then you'd certainly know about the Gulf Breeze case.
Oh yes,
and Ed Walters and what he got up to.
Yeah.
So we've got a few pictures that to give a little bit of background. This is, we're looking at we're looking at a case that was where it had really a lot of exposure back in the day. I mean, it was on all of the paranormal shows.
This was back in 88 or 89, I believe, when these encounters began.
Yeah.
In an area of northern Florida called
87, I think.
87, called Gulf Breeze in Florida.
Yeah.
I should say that I'm a little biased here, because I do think this is real, and I do think these photographs are real. Obviously a lot of people are very suspect of Ed Walters and his story. But I do lean towards the fact that his story and these photographs are real. But of course, I could be wrong. So let's take a look at the first photograph, and I think this was actually the first photograph that Ed Walters took. This was a photograph of one of the ships, and he took this with a Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
And then
Instant
the thing would come
yeah.
out of the bottom. You remember those things?
Yeah, instant picture.
Instant photographs, and all of his photographs were taken with a Polaroid camera, which, while it's not impossible to do double exposures and stuff on a Polaroid, it's significantly more difficult than doing it on 35 millimeter. So this was a photograph that he took from his driveway of his house in Gulf Breeze. And this was the first encounter he had when he went outside and he saw it. And he took several photographs he grabbed, because he was I think either an architect or a surveyor, something to do with.
He was a
contractor,
local contractor.
Yeah. And he had a Polaroid camera which he would use, when he went on site to with the building construction. He'd use the Polaroid to take photographs of the building and stuff and all that stuff. So he had the Polaroid camera at hand. It was in his study in his house. So when he walked out onto the deck of his house and overlooked the street and saw this thing, he ran in and quickly grabbed the Polaroid camera from his desk and snapped off 3 or 4 shots of this thing moving across the skyline. And this is one of the photographs from the Polaroid.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Reeves?
Well, a little bit of background. Of course, this all started in 1987, and the Gulf Breeze Sentinel, which was the local kind of paper, they first were given a number of pictures that Ed had taken in and around his home. And he asked them, do you want to do a story? Here's some pictures you can use. And they ran a story on these, the events that he was experiencing and the pictures that he was taking. And he obviously he claimed that they were, alien craft UFOs. And that's where the story first got, its exposure from. Of course, back then, if we put it into perspective, back then we have the rise of the paranormal TV shows, like Sightings, which was huge. We had a few shows over here, and we had the Unexplained magazines and all that stuff. And of course, this stuff was gold to them. These were like real photographs of alleged alien craft. So everyone was going with the story.
Around this time, 88, 89 in the U.S., there was like Donahue was like a daytime talk show.
Yeah.
And Oprah had a show. Oprah Winfrey had a show. And I think, if memory serves, that it might have been the Oprah show, or either Oprah or Donahue, I can't remember. But Ed Walters appeared on this show, and they interviewed him and talked to the audience members. And I think it's on YouTube, so you could probably search for it on YouTube. And it's definitely a very interesting conversation, for sure.
But with Ed, he took these photographs, he took Polaroid, but also, like the Billy Meier case, he also took he used video, because obviously it's a different, time went on and video cameras were available and you could buy them, and he was able to take video. Now, here's the thing: he was able to film objects he didn't just film these what he called like light craft. He didn't film those. He also was able to film these spheres of balls of spheres in the sky, and he was able to say, look, come to the beach, you'll see something.
Yes.
And there's a clip of him, a video of an object in the sky, and he's being videoed by someone he's brought along to prove that he's not making it up. And you can see the object in the sky, and it's there for maybe a few seconds, and then it zips away. And
that's something to bring up too, Reeves, is that around this time period in Gulf Breeze, Florida, it wasn't just Ed Walters that were seeing UFOs and craft.
Other people.
There were people from all over the city. They had there was like beachfront property, and they would see these things coming down over the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's not just he was the one guy with the camera taking the picture. There was multiple people, all unrelated, all seeing these things around that time period. Let's have one last look at this thing. Go ahead, Reeves. Finish your thought.
Of course, as time went on and he became, the UFO man in that area, and his story got more and more exposure, and he was on, like you say, talk shows. He was
Yeah.
being featured, had stories featured on the Sightings TV show and stuff like that. So people knew who he was. Now, when he moved from his address, now the new people that moved into his house, because he relocated, the new people that moved into his house.
Wait. Hold on. Don't go there yet.
Okay.
All
right.
We will
save that.
Oh, we absolutely will go there, but not.
Okay.
Hold on for a second.
All right.
And I want to say hold on for a second, because I've noticed in the chat there's a lot of skeptical people in the chat, which is good.
That's good. No, that's good. That's good. You need to question. This is why we're here looking at these pictures, because you need to question them.
Yeah. So Punches Couches comes out and says that this is a reflection of a ceiling light in a window.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And there's one other in here. Cool Tools says at Mindset Central, I bet his flash bounced off something, or the light was too light for the moon for cloaking to work. No, these were seen without the photographs. These were witnessed with his eyeballs. He saw the craft in the sky.
He also filmed them. He also filmed them with a video camera.
The next photograph I want to show is, this was a few days later of the same craft that returned. And I don't. The first one you can say, oh, it was a ceiling light. He took a picture. It was reflection. Even though that's not the case, I don't think that's the case. I can see how your thought process would come up and come to that conclusion, right? It makes logical sense, even though it's probably not true. The next photograph I have is of the same craft, but from a different angle and much closer to the ground. This one here is the craft that came and hovered over the road outside his house. You have any comments about this one, Reeves? Because this is a classic photograph right here.
Actually, this picture has kind of been one of the ones that have been used the most when you're covering the Golf Breeze case. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it came down to the road outside of his house. It hovered there. He allegedly snapped some pictures, and then it went on its way. These craft as well, he has got video of them passing the trees in the background,
right,
moving around in and out of the trees and at the background. So yes, now I'm right. So we've covered all this, but I also want to address the reflections and when people say, well, it was just a reflection or whatever. Yes, that is a possibility. I mean, you could look
Sure.
at it from that point of view, where if you project an image or paint an image or put a transparency on a piece of glass, put it up to wherever, the scenery of being outside, so you've got a really clean glass, and then you photograph it. There is a possibility that you could be doing that, and that's why these objects look semi-transparent. But that's not to say that that's what he did. But there is a possibility. You have to take that into account. That somebody might be trying to trick their way into stardom, or to be Mr. UFO. Once again, it's a lot of work. Because
when you think about, I don't think that's true with Ed Walters, because he kind of vanished off the scene in 91 or 92 and has never returned. And people who have tried to track him down, he's publicly said that I do not, no comment. Yeah. I don't want to know. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things they always is. Oh well, he's selling books. He's making money. Now, for somebody who's been into ufology for most of my life, and you yourself, Reeves, also would be able to comment on this. If you want to make money in life, getting into UFOs or the paranormal is not the way to go.
No,
right?
Not unless you've got
it's not the way to go.
TV show and you're willing to go around and do all the talks and chats and stuff.
The people that do make a living in these fields, they're absolutely a tiny minority.
Yeah.
So if it's like, he's just doing it for the money, that's not a valid excuse, because money is something that, yeah, can you make some money? Yes. Can you make a living? Unlikely. Are there exceptions to the rule? Of course, but it's that's a tiny minority that actually do make big bucks. The vast majority of people either make nothing or barely survive. And you got to understand, someone like Ed Walters, he had a successful contracting business. He was already doing extremely well, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a public figure making a lot of money, why would you want to tarnish your reputation? I mean, these kind of things can, and I think did for a while, damage his business, which was his main income.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the reason that he's kind of moved away from the like the UFO scene and stopped talking about it is because, I mean, he's very protective of where he lives now, and individuals have tried to go and speak with him. I mean, the filmmaker Dan Bell, he did a documentary on Ed Walters, and he tracked down his house, and he was literally too scared. He wanted to go knock on the door and speak, but he was, he was very scared about doing it, because it's like the guy doesn't want anything to do with UFOs or anything. Now, obviously, you could say, once again, playing devil's advocate, you could say, well, that's because he tried to pull off this great scam and it didn't work, or people found him out. But once again, you got to look at the background, and he had a business, he had a career, and if you're going to go and do that, and it's going to backfire on you, and you kind of know there's a possibility it will. It's not kind of good for what your income. As we said before, people, this is a very hard area to become, lucratively rich in.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a slog, and you have an experience. All right. I saw stuff when I was younger. I had witnesses. My father, my friend. We all saw weird stuff in the sky. We witnessed it for about a quarter of an hour, and it was an experience. And I don't know what they were. I have no idea. But they were certainly very quick and moved around and did stuff. But the thing is, I could go and write a book about my experiences and where it led me. And I do believe that that experience kind of edged me on to go and read about UFOs and take an interest in it more seriously. And here I am today. But the fact is that I know that if I wrote a book or did anything like that, it's not going to make me a millionaire. It's not going to make me rich, because it's like, if you're going to be doing it for that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
You're in the wrong game. If you want to make money, and significant amounts of money, getting into the paranormal or ufology, that's not the way to do it. There are better ways and easier ways to make lots of money than delving into this kind of stuff. Let's take one last look at this photograph, and then we'll talk about what happened in Ed Waters' house after he moved. So I'm familiar with this, but I'll let you tell the story, and then maybe I'll add to it. So he moved out of his house, and about I think it was either 8 months or a year later, the new occupants discovered something. What happened, Reeves?
Well, they moved in, and they decided to go through the house and have a bit of a clear out and make sure that everything was gone of his and stuff. And I think it was the husband. He went up in the attic, the loft, or what you want to call it, and to make sure everything was cleared out there. And he found these. He found this kind of card model of a like a spaceship, and of course he put two and two together. He knew the story, and he kind of put two and two together and thought, well, he's obviously just making models and taking photographs of them. And of course, once this got out into the public eye and into the local news and stuff, it kind of pretty much blew up as well. Here's proof that it was all a fake and none of it was real. But like with the Billy Meier case, where we have pictures of models of the craft that have been photographed, or similar to what the craft that have been photographed. You could say that you're so taken by what you're experiencing that you want to you want to try and create. You want to build some, it's the psychological thing, what goes on in someone's head where you're experiencing this and you're starting to, honestly, if I walk around the corner and I see a spaceship, in a field with an alien having a walkabout with his mate, I'm going to think I'm going a bit mental. That's the first thing I'm going to think. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you just said, Reeves, is absolutely correct. So, he moved house. Ed Walters moved house. 8 months or a year later, the house was empty for 8 months. So I don't know whether it was 8 months or a year.
Could have been a plot. Somebody.
Let's say 8 months. So let's say the house remained empty for about 8 months. And then they sold the house. New people moved in, and they found in the attic, they found a primitive paper model of this craft.
Yeah.
And there's photographs online. You can search for them. And it's paper. It looks, when they were holding it, it looks very delicate.
Like it's made of paper plates.
Just like two paper plates, and but it's of this. I'm going to point the right way, of this thing right here. Well, now this thing obviously has looks more solid structure. It has lights, and if you were going to make a model like that, you'd have to have some kind of circuitry inside with light bulbs and whatever the case may be. And it's clearly not a paper fragile model. And on one of these talk shows, I think it was the Oprah Winfrey show, when Ed Waters was on there, somebody brought this up while he was on there and said, "Hey, well, they found one of your models." And he addresses it on the show. And he says, look, I don't know where that model came from. I did not build it. I didn't create it. It was nothing to do with me. That house sat empty for 8 months.
Yeah.
And I think it was placed there on purpose as a way to ultimately discredit him. Yeah. Now, I know that there are skeptical people out there who are rolling their eyes and shaking their heads saying, no, it wasn't. It just proves that he faked it, right? Because once again, with zero research and a skeptical point of view, that's the easy way out, right? It's easier to say, oh, he faked it. There you go. Let's put that to bed. Move on. Nothing more to think about here. Whereas if he didn't fake it, there's a lot to think about. A lot to think about. This opens a whole new can of worms, and it seriously will challenge your worldview about how reality functions. So it's a lot easier to say, oh, it was just a model. He faked it. That's the end of that. Hey, what time's the game on? Any pizza and beer around here? Right? It's so much easier to go that route than the other route, because the other route does really mess with your worldview. It chips away at the way you perceive reality. Most people don't want that messed with. They don't want that fooled with at all. They're comfortable in their worldview, and if something attacks that, you have to defend your worldview, even if your worldview is false.
Well, that was what I was going to say earlier. That there is possibility that someone, popped in there and put a crude model, made a crude model and put it in the attic, and thinking this will shut him up. This will decredit him. And you always have to look at all of the evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, as I say, you have to look at all of and you have to sort of put it all on the table and think with a realistic, a realistic mindset to say, well, what have we got here, and what's the possibility that someone would have faked this? What is the reasoning behind it? What would be the what would be the sort of the payoff, at the end of the day? And I just don't know. I mean, you've got video of him on a beach and telling people, look in the sky, there's an object in the sky now, it's here, film it. And the guy is filming it, and then it just zips off, and it's like, well, he must be...
That was his paper model, Reeves.
Oh, okay.
That's what they were filming.
He's got to be Merlin. Model. So, yeah.
So we're going to move away from Ed Walters, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the photograph that's presented right here is real.
Okay.
Could I be wrong? I could be wrong, of course. I think it's a real photograph.
Yeah.
All right. What's our next one we should delve into?
Well, I think actually there is a Polish UFO picture, which is quite interesting because it's something that looks. Once again, we're talking about things that don't look real. It's one that was taken by quite a while ago. It was an image that was taken by an individual that was on his way home, and he saw this object over the trees, and he just snapped a picture. And it's a bizarre as a UFO is kind of bizarre if we see it.
Yeah, I'm just getting it ready. Hang on. Yeah, this one is shades of Billy Meier here. It looks very similar to the Meier photograph. Let me pull it up so everyone can see it. It's this one right here.
Yeah, the individual, he was cycling past. He was going through a village, and this is a place located, Jastrow, which is located near Warsaw.
Uh-huh.
And the individual was having a cycle, and he was going past the village, and he kind of looked over the treetops,
yeah,
and he saw this, this object, and he snapped a picture with it. Now, I think this might be one of the only images that is possibly off of digital. I'm not sure. Or it could be film, but it's a recent. I wouldn't say it was a very recent, but it is a more recent picture than the others that we've just looked at. So yes, I mean, if you look at I have this theory, and lots of people have this theory, and I think that it's a theory that it's not personally my theory, but it's a theory that I subscribe to. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when it comes to the UFO phenomenon as a whole, I do think that you as an individual, and this could go for anyone. Okay, this could go for anyone, that whether you're a non-believer or a believer or someone who is agnostic to it and not bothered either way.
Right.
I think that if you have an experience, or if you do have a sighting of an object, that what you're possibly what you're seeing is not actually what you're seeing, but what you're seeing is what your upbringing and your cultural background is interpreting.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of these objects. Now, obviously, you're going to say, well, someone's photographed it. It's that's what it is. But you have to. I'm going to get really science fiction here now, and really kind of weigh out. Imagine the occupants of the craft, or the occupants of whoever is controlling these vehicles, is able to read your mind and able to manifest what you are seeing in a way that you can interpret it as something that is within your realms of understanding.
Uh-huh. Well, when you were saying that, it reminded me of the sighting at Fatima in, was it 1917 or something, in the early part of the 20th century, where the vast majority of the people in that area were devout Catholics. So what they saw was a manifestation of the Virgin Mary, whereas other people who saw a strange light display, which was very along the lines of a UFO encounter. Obviously, all of the people saw something very strange.
Yeah.
But some people perceived it as a religious experience. Some people perceived it as, strange. Someone said, like, the sun came down from the sky. So everyone interpreted this strange event different ways based on their belief system or their perception of reality. And reality is filtered through our beliefs, right? Our culture, the media, how we were raised by our parents, where we live in the world. All of these things color how we perceive reality. So it makes sense that would happen. But this is a very interesting photograph. It is very reminiscent of the Billy Meier photographs we looked at earlier. And something I forgot to mention with the Billy Meier photographs and this one also is that these photographs of these structured craft are also incredibly similar to what Bob Lazar claimed to have seen in S4. Very similar to what he claimed to have seen.
Model, wasn't it?
Very, very similar. Yeah.
It's almost like that classic UFO shape. It's that classic
saucer, flying saucer
shape. And I think that if you say, if you ask anyone to draw a spaceship,
Right.
or as they know, what they know now as aerial
UAPs.
UAPs. That's it. That's weird in itself how they changed from UFO to UAP. I think they're trying to add more credibility because the military are getting involved with it now. And we have got an alleged military sighting, which is most bizarre, which we'll cover in a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that these craft, I think that we are, personally, I think that we as a species are part of the puzzle. And we as a species, we need to work out that part of the puzzle before you're going to get an answer, because the occupants of these craft, if they are in any way similar to us in any way, we're not that important to them. I don't think we're not as important as we think we are when we're up against, to these people or these individuals or these occupants, shall I say? Because we don't know what they are. We don't know where they're from or how they manifest or what really it is. I mean, there are many should we say, theories out there that this whole paranormal UFO is simply a product of ourselves, the human consciousness, that we manifest it, we create this phenomenon, and that what we are witnessing is a phenomenon that we've created and that we've put out there through this kind of global kind of wishful thinking or in some way a fear or anything. Pretty much like if you think about the poltergeist phenomenon, where you'll get someone who has a lot of mischievous, crazy stuff going on around them, and you'll go into a house and everything is focused on them, or when you're near them, you're the one that gets attacked as well. It kind of like that, but on a global scale, that we are in some way helping this phenomenon to be. As I say, it's just speculation.
Yeah, it's all speculation. Because we don't have any definitive answers, so we're all playing the speculation game, right? Coming up with hypothesis and trying to figure out what may or may not be going on. What's the next one we want to look at, Reeves? What's the next photo we got?
Well, I think that we should go to one that was in Europe, in Belgium, which was the classic Belgium triangle, which was photographed by, it was witnessed by two police officers who followed it for a number of miles. This was back in 1989. This was just outside of a small town of Upton, near the German border. The two police officers that were involved, they were on a routine patrol, and they saw they were in a field near them. They saw this kind of light. They didn't really know what it was, so they pulled over to the side of the road, and then they witnessed a huge triangle. Now they described this triangle to have a platform on it with huge lights that was lighting up the area. They described it as like headlights, but I can understand what they mean. It had these large lights on it, and they had this main light underneath it, which was kind of pulsating. It was like an engine or something, pulsating, and it appeared that the object was. Now here's the thing, that they got the distinct feeling that the object was, as they were watching the object was watching them.
Right.
So it was as interested in them as they were.
That's very common. That's very common for that to happen, where someone will have a close encounter of the first or second kind, and they're aware of the object, they're looking at it, and they have an intense feeling that even though they're looking at this object in the sky, the object is aware of them also. As if it's putting on some kind of show or some kind of performance in the sky.
Their sighting, they watched this object for, I think it was a little over half an hour before
didn't they follow it? They followed it in the police car?
They did, yeah. It started to move away towards the town, and so they decided that they were going to follow it, and they followed it slowly because they weren't really sure what they were following.
Right.
And they got to the town, and they witnessed this object. When it got to the town, certain places in the town, it was firing down what they described as shafts or
like
beams of light.
A beam of light.
Yeah, into an area, a particular area of the town. And then now they weren't the only ones that had.
Didn't they scramble the Belgian military? Like fighter jets went after it.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. They reported it to their superiors,
right?
And it was decided that they were gonna because there was an object over a town and it was doing this what it was doing. They scrambled jets, and of course as soon as these jets were on the scene, the object just sped off and it was gone.
So
but that wasn't.
Should we take a look at the object? So a photograph was taken. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
The object, to give some sort of visual perspective, the object was over the police car, and then it moved off. And as it moved nearer, there was a number of witnesses that saw it, and this was the best picture at the time that was taken.
Right.
And it kind of, you can clearly see what it is.
Let's take a look.
So that was the object as it moved overhead, which was taken. And of course, they talk about the headlights. That's the three lights on the outside, and then the light in the middle is the pulsating light that they were describing, which
So you can see there's motion blur here. So the object is moving.
Yeah,
it's a triangular object. This photograph was taken by the police officer.
Well, there were but there were also there were other individuals that witnessed this object at the time. But over the next few months, there were hundreds more witnesses that came forward describing similar triangular objects. And in April 1990, there was an individual that was responsible for this photograph. He came forward with a photograph that he claimed was the object that the same object that these individuals, the police, had seen way back when they originally had the original sighting. So he came with a photograph which was almost identical to what they was being presented previously. So this is a sighting where not just one or two people have seen an object, but many people,
multiple witnesses
over a period of time, a few months. You say a few months, but there was multiple sightings over that time. And it was a little bit of a Belgium UFO flap because people were seeing these objects in the sky, and we have this thing where the UFO phenomenon, it seems to appear in places, and you have a flap for a few months, and then it will all go quiet, and then it will go somewhere else, and then there'll be a flap, and almost like it's a kind of, it's an event that happens, and then people see it, and then it goes somewhere else. So it's fascinating because we have a photograph there, and of course, when we look at you could say now, yes, you could say, well, it's a military experiment. That craft is what we have today. Those the triangles which the military have filmed and don't know what they are. They don't admit that they're experimental craft, but they've got them on infrared film flying.
These triangle craft were witnessed throughout the 1990s. In all parts of the world. In the U.S., I think Art Bell famously had a very close encounter with one of these triangular craft, which probably looked very, very similar to this photograph. One of the eeriest thing about these craft is that they are huge, like enormous craft that kind of just hang in the sky and move without making a sound. In complete silence. And I just want the people watching this stream to kind of imagine that if you're out somewhere at night and it's a quiet night and you look up and you see this ginormous black triangle kind of glide overhead in complete silence, it's pretty disturbing. It can be very unnerving if you can just kind of imagine witnessing something like that.
I'll relay a story of a friend who had an encounter with a black triangle. She's in your neck of the woods. She lives in let me think. She lives in Kentucky, I think. But she worked the night shift, at one of these big warehouse stores, which open late, and she was doing the night shift, and she was on her way. She'd left the job. It was near midnight, something like that, and she was driving home. And of course, where she lives is kind of like in the middle of nowhere,
so it's rural area.
Rural area, these little lanes and streets with not many people around, and the houses are massively spread out. Well, on her way home, she passes through a small like town area, and you've got your school, a football field, and some shops and stuff. And then she drives through the town. Well, on this evening, she was driving home, and she came through this town area, and she just happened to look up in the sky, and she saw something. Well, she couldn't see the sky, put it that way. She couldn't see the stars.
It was blocking out the stars.
Yeah, and it kind of, that was weird. So she pulled over and got out of her car, and opposite she was parked right next to a large playing field. And she looked up in the sky, and she said she saw the biggest triangle. She thought it was like a hot air balloon or something like that, because there was absolutely no sound. There was no propeller sound. There was no jet sound.
Nothing.
There were no machine, like there was no engine sound. But what there was, she said, it was a very, very low electrical hum. Like if you're near like an electrical
like
power generator,
that
very low hum. It was like that, and she watched. This object didn't hover. It was slowly, very, very slowly moving over the playing field, and it moved over the treetops and the houses, and then just carried on over other rural land. Yeah. And she was in awe of watching it, but then all of a sudden, she became immensely panicked and immensely frightened. Yeah. And she just got in her car and just sped home. And the first thing she did when she got back, and it was really late at night, because I remember her messaging me on a messenger saying, "My God, I've just seen this huge black triangle. I'm freaking out." And of course, I got her to relay to me what her experience was. But I mean, she did see something. Whether it was a military experiment or something that they were testing in a quiet area, who knows? But she definitely and she's somebody doesn't make things up.
Yeah. I mean, these encounters are relatively common. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony. You see these things, and your first thought would be, well, maybe it's some kind of hot air balloon, right? Because it's moving slowly, and there's no sound. Yeah. But these things are literally ginormous.
Massive.
They're huge.
You said it was as big as the pit football
huge.
Field. Huge.
But you think, okay, well, it could be some kind of hot air balloon. But here's the thing, though. Many witnesses relate that these things are moving very slowly with no sound, blocking out the stars as it goes by. And as they're watching it moving along very slowly, all of a sudden, it's gone. Boop.
Bizarre.
It's gone. There's nothing there. Boom. Gone. And I don't think there are many balloons that can do that. But let's take one last look at this incredible photograph of one of these big black triangles with its lights on underneath.
So I think stuff. That it is, and I think that there's a very, very high possibility that we have back engineered technology to a point where we have craft now which are literally these triangles, and they're able to fly without sound, right. However they're being, whatever propulsion, whether they are able to leave our atmosphere, and how many people do they have on board? Do they fly themselves? Are they massive drones? Right. Who knows?
We don't know,
but they're huge.
Yeah. Good stuff. Let's dive into another photograph.
Well, I think what we'll do now, as we're talking about the military, we're going to have a look at the USS Japan pictures.
Yes,
which are from a submarine, alleged from a
these
submarine.
Photographs are I don't even know where to begin, dude. They're amazing. And I'm hoping you have some of the background, Reeves, as to where these photographs came from. and when they appeared in the public domain.
Well, they were more. It was more of allegedly, apparently leaked into the public domain.
Right.
They were on sites like
above top secret, things like that, right?
And and sites like that, yeah. But the USS Japan SSN 674 is a Sturgeon class attack submarine, and it was part of the American military, machine. Now, this encounter allegedly took place in March 1971. The object, originally, it was one object that was spotted, and it was between Iceland and Norway's Jan Mayen Island in the Atlantic Ocean, where the sub was just doing its routine thing, and it was spotted when they were doing their like a periscope check, just checking stuff, and one object was seen to be breaking the water. And this is a sequence of images that were taken. I believe they weren't. They were taken via the periscope. That's why they have a very strange
the photographs
perspective.
are. I mean, the photographs were taken by a submarine. So hang on, let me get the photographs ready. They were taken by a submarine, so we got to keep that in mind when we look at these photographs. So let me pull up the first one so you can take a look at it. Now these photographs, they illustrate a craft which is very similar to the ones that are now doing the rounds for the UAPs and that, where they're calling them trans-medium craft. In other words, they can move very fast through the air, dive into the ocean, and go just as fast under the ocean with no ill effects. They can go in and out of water like nothing. And this illustrates this. So just imagine there's a submarine who maybe breaks the surface water or puts the periscope up and witnesses these events and takes a series of photographs. Here's the first photograph we'll look at.
Yeah. So this is taken from the periscope of the submarine, and this object is now out of the water and hovering a few hundred feet above the ocean surface. So these objects allegedly come out of the ocean, and they are being the submarine at the time had this is a random event apparently that happened, and they it wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't something that it wasn't some great meeting or something that they just snapped these pictures and they were documenting it. So yeah, I think that. And of course, the pictures came out into the public because they were leaked. Obviously, with anything like this, there's a massive amount of skepticism about it because it's really, really hard to trace any information back to actually who took the pictures, who was names, actual any documentation. Did anyone report it? Did anyone write a report on it? And as we know with other UFO cases, once you start, especially in the military, if you have something, happens, usually someone higher up will come along and either tell you to be quiet about it or take everything, take all your hard drives or whatever you've got, and they're gone, and and you're ordered not to speak about it.
So here's a photograph of the same object but from a different angle. This is the same object that we just saw a few moments ago, but this is a different angle as it's rotating.
But there's an interesting. Some people say that when they see these submersible UFOs, that when they come out of the water, they seem to be steaming, as if the water is kind of boiling off of them.
The steam coming off the
as
ship.
They come out of the water. So now, I think I've included it in this sequence. The object as it's coming out of the water,
right?
And it's kind of steaming.
Well, there's another photograph of the object. I don't know whether it's going into the water. I think it's coming out. I can't tell.
Yeah,
But this one right here is.
This is the one of the first sequence of the. This is what they first saw. As they obviously started to photograph, document what they were seeing. But this is what first they saw through their periscope. And of course, the sequence afterwards is the object coming out of the water,
Right.
and then it's in the sky, and then it kind of does
So
a maneuver.
I have that
from
one.
then
Let me
on.
just line up the one where I think this is the one you're talking about, Reeves, with the steam coming off the object as it exits the surface. So we'll take a look at that one.
There we go.
That's the other one.
That's as it comes out of as it's coming out of the water, it's kind of steaming.
Yeah.
And we've heard this before with people who see submersible objects that enter and come out of the water, that they fizzle as they come out of the water, as if the liquid is being either boiled off of them, or it's kind of been repelled off of the object. So this is what apparently is happening here in this frame. And as you can see the sort of X where the periscope
right.
markers, the distance markers on the periscope. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I think there's is there one more?
There is. Let me
there's one more.
Let me find it. Hang on. There's that one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, this one. Hang on. Let me get this one lined up. This is an interesting one too. And I know all of these photographs are in black and white, but for some reason this one looks like it was taken from a book, because you can still see the staples in the center of the photograph, but it kind of looks like it's in color. I don't know. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I think they're all on color film, but it's just the way that it's taken, and it's also because there's not much color out there where they were. But yeah, this is one which kind of, as it's come out of the water, it's kind of covered in this kind of haze.
Right.
It's the same object, but obviously it's kind of maneuvering and stuff. But it's these are obviously they were leaked. It's very hard to trace any information back. But
these photographs do look very, very authentic. Now, could they be faked? Absolutely, but they look very real. Let's just go through them real quick. So this one here is a close-up of it leaving the ocean with the steam coming off it.
Mm.
This is when it's actually in the air, when it's exited the ocean. This is the same craft from a different angle. It's changed its angle. It's flying flat towards the surface of the ocean. And then we have this one where it's going back into the ocean or coming out. It's hard really to tell which one is which.
There are obviously there were more pictures that allegedly were taken, but I've just chosen the kind of more choice ones that show.
Well, there's this one also. This one I think is one of the most impressive ones, and this is when it's coming out of the ocean very, very quickly.
Mm.
I think I can't tell if it's going out or going in, but it looks like from the way the water is being dispersed, it looks like it's coming out of the water at a great speed.
Mm. It definitely is strange. At least it's very strange, and it does. When you look at these photos, you just think, once again, if someone's faked that, they did a pretty good job.
Yeah,
they did a pretty good job on that.
Look very, very real, and they do have a very military quality to
them. And because they're not perfect, because the images aren't perfect, it makes them even more kind of authentic. Because
I do think these photographs are real, but of course, like I've said, little disclaimer, of course I could be wrong. This could be fake, but I don't think so. I think these are legitimate photographs.
Well, yeah, unless we can go and knock on the door of the individual that took the photographs and ask them,
excuse me,
you have to speculate. And it's like the whole, as we said earlier, the whole UFO field, when you look at evidence, and I say evidence,
right,
you have to kind of look at it from a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of logic, a little bit of kind of sensible. Look at it in a sensible way and think, what am I seeing here?
Right. And
draw your conclusions. And some people are going to say, well, it's a lot of old nonsense, and some people will say, oh, it's 100% real. I know you could say it's a bit of a cop out, but I like to be on the fence. I like to look at it from both sides, because I think that you have to kind of give everything a fair, a fair run, because at the end of the day, you don't have all the facts. You only have what is presented to you, and you can only draw a conclusion from that. Is this real? Was it leaked? Well, put it this way: considering what we're seeing now coming out of the military and the pictures that they're showing, and they're saying, and they're actually admitting that we don't know what that is, but it's something.
Right.
And then you see stuff like this. Well, the possibility now is that this stuff that we're seeing that is, people could say, well, it's not real. Well, the possibility is that more than likely could be real. So,
well, we do have a lot of photographs to go through, but I really think we should start wrapping up the show. I would like to talk a little bit about the Trent photographs, which are, from my perspective, incredibly compelling. And I think, without a doubt, completely authentic and very, very real. And this is a farming company a couple in Trent, in Oregon, I think in 1952. They snapped 2 photographs of a craft that flew over their farm. And the thing was, what's crazy about this, and this really adds to the authenticity of this story, is that they took the 2 photographs, but they still had film left on the camera. Yeah. So they waited to take those other birthday parties or whatever before they took before they took the film in to be developed. So several months after they took the photograph, when they'd used all the roll of the film, taking mundane pictures of family or whatever, then they took the film in to be developed, right? And that kind of points in these are not people up to no good. And these were hardworking, regular people running a farm in Trent in 1952. This craft flies over. They were able to snap 2 photographs on their camera. They didn't immediately rush into the pharmacist to get it developed. They still had some film left, so they waited till those photographs were taken. Several months went by until they filmed it all, filled all the photos. Then they took it in to be developed, and the photos came out. So let's take a look at the first photograph.
It's kind of from the distance,
And this shows
when they first saw it,
a structured craft flying over the farmhouse. This is a very, very famous photograph. They see it flying over, and there's a second picture. Let me try and get that going here. Hang on 1 second. Let me pull that. Let's get that. Give me a minute here. I do apologize. The second one shows the craft from a side angle, so you can clearly see the structure of the craft. It has like some kind of little bump on the top, like a little antenna or whatever. Who knows what it is? Like the apex of the top of the craft, right there. And then there's another photograph. Now this is not a photograph. This is not another photograph, so to speak. This is a close up of
it's a crop,
of the edge of the craft. Let me just pull that up real quick. Give me 1 second, and I'll show you that. It's this one right here where they do a close up of the craft itself, so you can see it is definitely a structured craft. Everything about these 2 photographs reeks of authenticity.
But this kind of design of craft was always seen a lot back then in the 50s. I mean, the thing is that I remember that when I read about this case, there's a lot of conjecture. People say, well, it's just a hubcap. They've thrown a hubcap in the sky and they've photographed it. But I think that if you're going to do that, and if you want to create, as we said earlier, if you want to create some sort of fake UFO thing you're going to kind of want to get that developed straight away and sort of get it in the papers and see if you can, there's a motivation behind it. As where these individuals, they took a couple of snaps and are like, yeah, we'll get it developed when we've taken.
Well,
we've used the film.
throwing the hubcap and taking pictures doesn't make sense because there are literally only 2 photographs taken. On the.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
on the
there
complete
would be
reel.
more. Yeah.
So there's photographs before of family, friends, whatever. There's 2 photographs of this object. And then there's photographs after that of other mundane, the farmhouse, family, friends, or on the roll, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to throw the hubcap and take 2 pictures, there's no way of knowing. You might throw it, click, and you develop it, and it's nothing, or you get the wrong. There's no way of knowing that you get these photographs, and these look so real. These are the only 2 photographs in Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book looked into this in depth, and even though they were biased to explaining away these stories, they could not explain away.
They checked.
Photographs. They could not. They authenticated them.
Authenticated the negatives that they hadn't been tampered with. There was no tampering with the actual print. So whatever was in the image was actually there at the time when they took the photograph. It was
really, really there. These are from my perspective and the perspective of many, many other people who have seriously looked into these photographs. These are 100% legitimate photographs of something, of a structured craft flying in the air. Now, as to what the craft is or who built it or where it came from, who knows? But these photographs are authentic from 1952. So very real photographs for sure. So Reeves, we should think about start wrapping it up.
Yes, I think. Are there any questions in the chat?
I was going to say, if anyone in the chat has any questions or comments, now is the time, and we'll delve in there. Myself and Reeves will attempt to answer any questions or anything that you might think is of relevance. I'll go ahead and look at some of the comments that some of the people have been typing in here. Punch's Couches, I think this is in regard to the USS Japan, the submarine photographs. The chaotic nature of the photos make them look very real, which is true. Firechild UK, I know who that is. Who's that? He says, if only I'd seen a photo of it exiting the water with the spray, I would have thought it was a sperm whale. But with all the other photos together, it makes the sequence more compelling. Yeah, I agree completely. Rick Howden says it's a Triumph TR7. There you go. All right. Humor is always a good way to deal with the unknown, especially if you're a little nervous. I don't know if you've noticed that, Reeves.
The Triumph TR7. I'm going to say to that, New Avengers.
The New Avengers.
New Avengers. Purdy.
That's right. She had a Triumph TR7. That's right.
Yeah. When it started.
There you go. Well, we don't appear to be getting many questions in the chat, so I think this might be a good time to wrap up the show. Let me jump over here. So I want to thank everyone for coming on today and watching us. I'm hoping you've enjoyed it. I hope that showing some of these pictures might, even if you are a diehard skeptic, these might have planted some seeds to make you start thinking about this and researching and digging into it, because there's more to this story than meets the eye. It's very easy to say, oh, that's a reflection, that's a this, blah, blah, blah. It's so easy to do that. It's a lot harder to dig in and to speculate and think, well, what if this is a real photograph? Hopefully myself and Reeves showing these pictures has planted some seeds. I would ask you all, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Hit subscribe, and you'll be notified when there's future upcoming live streams and videos on the Mindset Central channel. and hit the bell, hit the thumbs up, and all that stuff if you enjoyed the video. And that's about it. Any final words from you, Reeves?
No, I just want to thank everyone for coming along and supporting the live stream. It's very, very good of you, and I think that when we originally started to do the Paratalk podcast, we didn't really have live streaming on the agenda. But of course, with the whole streaming thing sort of taking off, we decided to give it a go, and it's nice to see that people will come and support us. And when we do them, I mean, we'd like to do more of them, but the problem is because of the time difference and our schedules, it can be quite difficult. So if there isn't regular live streams, there'll always be as regular as we can podcasts. So you're gonna, if it interests you, this if you're new here, then remember to check out our podcast, because we got an absolute ton of them.
Yeah, just to echo that. Yeah, if you go to mindsetcentral.com, you can find all the Paratalk podcasts that you can, it's all audio based. But just to echo what Reeves said, our schedules are a little off, but we hope to do these Paratalk live streams every couple of weeks as time permits. If we can work out a scheduling between myself and Reeves, we'll do this, and we'll advertise it, a couple of days before, maybe a week before, letting you guys know. So if you have enjoyed this live stream, the Paratalk live stream, don't forget, subscribe so you'll be notified when the next one comes up. So once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you again when we come back with some more Paratalk. Good night, everyone.